Ambassador Zethkara pressed her six-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of her ship. Through the thick glass window she could see the red markers floating in space like drops of blood against the black void. Each marker was the size of a small moon, glowing with a light that hurt to look at directly. They formed a perfect line stretching as far as her eyes could see in both directions. "How many of them are there?" asked Captain Mortek from behind her. His voice shook slightly. As he spoke, Zethkara did not turn around. She kept staring at the markers. The Council's records say there are over 10,000 of them. They form a complete sphere around human space, no gaps. No way through except where they allow it. The captain moved closer to the window. He was a Krell warrior, tall and strong, with blue skin that was harder than most metals. But even he seemed small and weak when looking at the human boundary markers. "I have fought in 7 wars," Mortek said quietly. "I have seen planets burn and stars die, but I have never seen anything like this." Zethkara finally turned to face him. Her own species, the Veltar, were known for their calm minds and careful thoughts. But today she felt fear creeping into her heart like ice water. "My grandfather told me stories about the old days. Before the humans built this wall, he said space was different then. Ships moved freely between all the star systems. Trade happened everywhere. Species met and learned from each other. That was 300 years ago," Mortek replied. "Before the contact wars, before the humans showed us what real power looks like," a loud beep echoed through the ship. The voice of their pilot, a young Veltar named Sashara, came through the speakers. "Ambassador, we are approaching the tribute drop zone. The human defense platforms are scanning us now." Zethkara felt her heart beat faster. Even though they were here on official council business, even though they carried the proper codes and permissions, she still felt like prey being watched by a hunter. Every species in the galaxy felt this way when they came near human space. She walked to the command center of their small diplomatic ship. Through the main screen she could see more than just the red markers now. Massive structures hung in space. Between the markers, they looked like metal cities, each one bigger than the largest space stations in Council territory. Weapons pointed out from every surface, and strange energy fields flickered around them like protective shields. "Those are the defense platforms," Sashara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Council's best scientists have been studying them for centuries. They still do not understand how they work," Mortek snorted. "What is there to understand? Point them at something, and that something stops existing. The humans proved that well enough during the war." Zethkara remembered the lessons from her childhood. Every young alien learned about the contact wars in school. It was the most important event in galactic history, and the most shameful. 17. Different species had joined together in what they called the Betrayal Coalition. They had decided that humans were too dangerous to exist alongside other intelligent life. The coalition's plan had been simple. Humans were still new to space travel. They had only discovered faster-than-light flight 50 years before. Their technology was primitive compared to most galactic species. Their worlds were poorly defended. It should have been easy to wipe them out quickly and completely. The coalition attacked without warning. They bombed Earth cities from orbit. They destroyed human colonies on dozens of worlds. They killed over 2 billion people in the first week of fighting. The coalition leaders thought they were being smart and practical. They thought they were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous threat. They were wrong. "Drop zone in sight," Sashara announced. "Beginning tribute delivery procedure." Through the screen, Zethkara could see a large empty area of space marked by floating beacons. This was where the galactic tribute was delivered every 3 months. Food, raw materials, manufactured goods, works of art, scientific data, everything the galaxy could offer to keep the humans satisfied and peaceful. The back of their ship opened, and mechanical arms pushed out dozens of large containers. Each container was the size of a small building and packed full of tribute goods. As soon as the containers were released, they began floating toward the human defense platforms. "The containers are being scanned," Sashara reported. "Energy signatures." Match human technology. Very advanced, very thorough. Zethkara watched the containers disappear into the defense platforms. She wondered what the humans did with all the tribute goods. Did they need the food? Did they use the raw materials? Or was the tribute just a symbol, a way to remind the galaxy who was really in charge? Ambassador, Mortek said, may I ask you something? Of course. Do you think we were right? To attack them, I mean, during the war. Zethkara considered the question carefully. It was not something most people talked about openly. The contact wars were a source of shame for every species that had participated. The coalition leaders thought humans were dangerous, she said finally. They looked at human history and saw nothing but war and violence. They saw how quickly humans learned new technologies. They saw how aggressively humans expanded into space. They decided that humans would eventually threaten or conquer all other species. But were they right? Mortek pressed. Zethkara looked back at the defense platforms. Each one could probably destroy her entire homeworld without much effort. The humans had built thousands of them. They had weapons and technology that the galaxy's best minds could not understand or copy. Maybe they were right about humans being dangerous, she said, but they were wrong about what to do about it. The Coalition's attack on humanity had lasted exactly 72 hours. Not because the humans surrendered or because the Coalition decided to stop. It lasted 72 hours because that was how long it took the humans to completely destroy every single Coalition military force in the galaxy. Nobody knew how they did it. Human technology during first contact had been primitive. Their fastest ships were slower than most civilian transports. Their weapons were basic energy blasters and simple missiles. Their total population was less than 5 billion people spread across 30 worlds, but somehow, in the space of 3 days, the humans had struck back with power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Coalition fleets that outnumbered human forces 1,000 to 1 simply vanished. Coalition homeworlds found their entire orbital defense networks shut down by some kind of electronic attack. Coalition leaders who thought they were safe in underground bunkers were pulled out by human soldiers who seemed to appear from nowhere. The war ended when the human fleet arrived at the Coalition Council's meeting place, a massive space station called Unity Prime that was supposed to be the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. The humans destroyed every single defense platform, disabled every weapon, and captured every Coalition leader without firing a shot at the station itself. Then they made their demands. All Coalition species would withdraw from a sphere of space around the human worlds. The sphere would have a radius of 500 light-years, making it one of the largest territories in the galaxy. No alien ship would enter this space without human permission. No alien would attempt to contact humanity without going through proper channels. In exchange, the humans would not hunt down and exterminate every Coalition species, most of the galaxy thought. These demands were reasonable. The Coalition had started an unprovoked war of extermination. The humans were showing mercy by accepting surrender, instead of finishing what the Coalition had started. But the humans were not finished making demands. Every species in the galaxy, not just the Coalition members, would pay tribute to humanity. Every 3 months, the tribute would include food, materials, technology, and cultural items. Any species that refused to pay tribute or tried to enter human space without permission would be destroyed completely. Some species had thought this was a bluff. The Morgeth Empire, which had not been part of the Coalition, decided to test human resolve. They sent a single scout ship into human space to see what would happen. The entire Morgeth species went extinct the next day. All 43 of their worlds were turned into lifeless rocks. Their fleets were completely destroyed. Even Morgeth civilians living on other species' worlds simply vanished without a trace. After that, nobody questioned human demands anymore. Tribute. Delivery complete, Sashara announced. All containers have been accepted. We are clear to depart. As their ship turned away from the red markers, Zethkara felt relief wash over her. Another successful tribute delivery. Another 3 months of safety for the galaxy, but she also felt sadness. Her grandfather had told her stories about the old days when different species worked together and learned from each other. Humans had been part of that galaxy for a brief time. They had shared their music and art. They had contributed to scientific research. They had seemed to enjoy meeting other intelligent species. All of that was gone now. The humans had retreated behind their wall of red markers and defense platforms. They spoke to the galaxy only through automated systems that accepted tribute and gave nothing in return. An entire species had become ghosts, present but untouchable. Do you think they are still the same? Mortek asked as they flew away from human space. The humans, I mean, do you think 300 years of isolation has changed them? Zethkara did not answer immediately. She thought about the defense platforms and their incomprehensible technology. She thought about the perfect organization of the tribute system. She thought about the complete silence from human space. No communications. No cultural exchanges, no scientific papers, nothing. I think, she said finally, that we broke something when we attacked them, something that can never be fixed. The journey back to Council space would take several days. As their ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, Zethkara looked back one last time at the red markers. They were already too far away to see clearly, but she knew they were still there. They would always be there, a permanent reminder of what happened when someone tried to destroy humanity. She wondered if her grandchildren would ever see a galaxy where those markers were not needed. She wondered if humans would ever forgive the rest of the galaxy for what the Coalition had done. Most of all, she wondered what humanity had become during their 3 centuries of isolation, but those were questions that might never have answers. The red markers made sure of that. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of Terra Station, watching the streams of ships moving between the orbital platforms around Earth. Cargo vessels carried goods between the worlds of human space. Passenger ships brought families to visit relatives on distant colonies. Military patrol craft kept careful watch over everything, their sleek hulls gleaming in the light of Sol. From here, Earth looked peaceful and prosperous. The blue and green planet below showed no signs of the terrible damage it had suffered 300 years ago. The cities had been rebuilt. The orbital defenses were stronger than ever. Humanity had not just survived the Coalition's attack, they had grown, beyond anything their enemies could have imagined. But Sarah knew the truth that the beautiful view could not show. Humanity had paid a terrible price for their survival, and their power. She turned away from the window as her aide, Lieutenant James Park, approached with a data pad in his hands. James was young, barely 25 years old. Like everyone born in the last 3 centuries, he had never seen an alien in person. He had never heard alien music or tasted alien food. He had never felt the wonder of discovering that intelligence could take so many different forms. Admiral, the quarterly reports from the Outer Rim colonies are ready for your review, James said, handing her the datapad. Sarah took the device and began scrolling through the information. New Eden Colony had increased food production by 12%. Nova Prime had finished construction of 3 new manufacturing centers. Horizon Station had successfully tested a new type of fusion reactor that was 30% more efficient than older models. The numbers were impressive. Humanity now controlled over 2,000 star systems. Their population had grown to nearly 50 billion people. Their technology advanced faster every year, fueled by the resources that flowed in from the Galactic tribute payments. Everything looks good, Sarah said, but her voice carried no joy. Too good, perhaps. James looked confused. Admiral? Sarah handed the data pad back to him. Tell me, Lieutenant, what do you think about when you look at these reports? I think about how far we have come, James replied. How strong we have become. How safe our people are. And do you ever think about what we have lost? James was quiet for a moment. Sarah could see him thinking carefully about his answer. Like most young people, he had been taught that the isolation was necessary, that it was the only way to keep humanity safe from another betrayal. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like, he said finally, to meet other intelligent species, to learn about their cultures and their ways of thinking. But then I remember, What happened during the contact wars, and I know that the price would be too high. Sarah nodded. This was the standard response that young humans gave. It was what they had been taught in school, what they heard in government speeches, what their parents told them. The isolation was necessary. The galaxy could not be trusted. Humanity was safer alone, but Sarah was old enough to remember different teachings. Her grandmother had been alive during the brief period of first contact before the war. She had told Sarah stories about the wonder and excitement of those early days, when humanity first learned they were not alone in the universe. "Come with me," Sarah said to James. "I want to show you something." They took a transport shuttle from Terra Station down to Earth's surface, landing at a facility in what had once been called Geneva. The building was unremarkable from the outside, just another government office complex surrounded by gardens and security barriers, but inside, the building held one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets. Sarah led James through several security checkpoints, each one scanning their identities and confirming their clearance levels. Finally, they arrived at a large door marked with symbols that James did not recognize. "This is the Xenocultural Research Division," Sarah explained as the door slid open. "Most people do not know it exists." The room beyond the door was unlike anything James had ever seen. The walls were covered with images of strange creatures, beings with too many arms or no arms at all, creatures with skin like metal or fur like starlight, creatures that floated in gas clouds or swam through liquid methane. "These are some of the species we met during first contact," Sarah said, walking slowly through the room. "The Veltar, who think in poetry and mathematics. The Krell, who measure honor by how well they protect others. The Jathe, who communicate through changes in their skin color. The Morden, who build cities that exist in 17 dimensions." James stared at the images in amazement. He had seen pictures of aliens before in history books and military training materials, but those had always focused on the coalition species, the ones who had attacked humanity. These images showed something different, intelligence and beauty and creativity that seemed to shine even through the static pictures. "They were all our friends once," Sarah continued. "We traded with them. We learned from them. We shared art and music and scientific discoveries. For 27 years, humanity was part of something larger than itself." They stopped in front of a particular display that showed a group of humans and aliens working together in what looked like a laboratory. The aliens had multiple arms and skin that shifted between different colors. They were helping human scientists examine some kind of crystal that glowed with its own light. "The Jathe helped us develop quantum computers," Sarah said. "They think faster than humans, but in patterns we could learn to understand. Together we made discoveries that neither species could have made alone." James studied the picture carefully. "What happened to them?" "They were part of the coalition," Sarah replied quietly. "They died when we struck back." The weight of those words settled over James like a heavy blanket. He had always known that humanity had destroyed the coalition species during the war, but it had always seemed abstract, like something that happened to enemies who deserved their fate. Looking at the picture of humans and Jathe working together, it felt different. It felt like murder. "Why are you showing me this?" James asked. Sarah moved to the center of the room where a large holographic display could be activated. She pressed a series of buttons, and the display came to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Human space appeared as a red sphere in one section, surrounded by thousands of other star systems marked in different colors. "This is what the galaxy looks like now," Sarah said. "We control about 15% of all known star systems. We have the strongest military, the most advanced technology, the most efficient economy. By any measure, we have won." She pressed another button, and the display changed to show the galaxy as it had looked 300 years ago. The red sphere representing human space was much smaller, just a tiny dot compared to the vast territories controlled by other species. "And this is what it looked like during first contact," Sarah continued. "We were the newest and weakest members of the galactic community. We controlled 30 star systems out of more than 100,000. We were nobody special. James studied both displays, trying to understand what Sarah was trying to tell him. We are stronger now, safer, more advanced. Why is that a bad thing? Sarah turned off the holographic display and faced him directly. Because we achieved all of this by cutting ourselves off from everything that made first contact wonderful. We became powerful, but we became alone. She gestured to the images around the room. Most of these species still exist. They pay tribute to us every 3 months. They fear us, they avoid us, but they are still out there, living and growing and creating amazing things that we will never see. Dr. Morrison in the psychology department has been studying the tribute recordings for decades, Sarah continued. Every shipment includes cultural items, art, music, literature, scientific papers. He analyzes everything, trying to understand how these species have changed since the war. What has he learned? That we are missing out on 3 centuries of incredible discoveries, Sarah said. The Veltar have developed a form of mathematics that treats time as a living entity. The Krell have created art forms that exist in dimensions we cannot perceive. The Thoroks have learned to communicate with quantum particles. And dozens of other species have made breakthroughs that could change everything we know about the universe. James felt something stirring in his chest, a feeling he could not quite name. It was excitement mixed with sadness, wonder mixed with regret. Could we not learn these things from the tribute items? Some of them, Sarah admitted. But science and art are not just about the final results. They are about the process of discovery, the collaboration between different minds, the joy of sharing new ideas with others who can appreciate them. We get the artifacts, but we miss the meaning behind them. They left the xenocultural research division and took another transport to a different part of Earth. This time, they went to a city called Memorial, built on the site where millions of humans had died during the Coalition's orbital bombardment. The city was beautiful, with gleaming towers and peaceful parks. But at its center stood a massive monument, a black stone pyramid covered with the names of everyone who had died during the contact wars. The monument was surrounded by fountains that ran red, symbolizing the blood that had been spilled. Every human child visits this place at least once, Sarah said as they walked around the monument. We teach them about the price of trust. We show them what happens when humanity lets its guard down. James had been here before, of course. Every citizen of human space made the pilgrimage to Memorial at some point in their lives. But today, after seeing the images in the research facility, the monument felt different to him. Admiral, he said carefully, do you think the isolation was a mistake? Sarah was quiet for a long time. They walked completely around the monument, twice before she answered. I think the isolation was necessary, she said finally. After what the Coalition did to us, there was no other choice. We had to protect ourselves. We had to make sure nothing like that could ever happen again. But James could hear the uncertainty in her voice. But I also think we have become something we never intended to be, Sarah continued. We set out to protect humanity and we succeeded. But in the process, we lost something essential about what it means to be human. What do you mean? Sarah stopped walking and pointed to one section of the monument where the stone was carved with images of the pre-war period. The images showed humans working alongside aliens, exploring new worlds together, sharing discoveries and celebrating achievements as a galactic community. Humanity has always been defined by our curiosity, she said. Our desire to explore, to learn, to connect with others. We are a species that builds bridges, but for 300 years we have been building walls instead. James looked at the images on the monument, then at the red fountains, then at the names of the dead carved into the black stone. So what do we do? I do not know, Sarah admitted. The people who made the decision to isolate humanity are long dead. We are left with the consequences of their choices. And changing course now would be incredibly dangerous. Dangerous how? Because we have become so much more powerful than the rest of the galaxy, Sarah explained. During first contact, we were equals. If we rejoined the galactic community now, we would be masters whether we wanted to be or not. The other species would see us as conquerors, not as friends. As they walked back toward their transport, James thought about everything he had seen and heard. The images of cooperation and discovery, the monument to the dead, the vast power that humanity had built during their isolation. The loneliness that seemed to hang over everything like a shadow. "Admiral," he said as they reached their shuttle, "what do you think my children will think about all this? If I have children, I mean." Sarah smiled sadly. "I think they will face the same questions we are facing now. Whether security is worth isolation, whether power is worth loneliness, whether the price we pay for safety is too high." As their shuttle lifted off from Memorial and climbed back toward Terra Station, James looked down at the beautiful, prosperous, lonely world below. For the first time in his life, he wondered if humanity had won the contact wars after all. Maybe they had just traded one kind of defeat for another. Captain Maria Santos walked slowly through the entrance hall of the Museum of First Contact, her boots clicking against the polished marble floor. Behind her, a group of 20 young cadets followed in neat formation, their eyes wide with wonder. As they took in their surroundings, the entrance hall was designed to inspire awe. The ceiling stretched up 50 meters, covered with a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it had looked during humanity's first contact with alien life. Thousands of star systems glowed in different colors, representing the territories of dozens of intelligent species. Trade routes connected the systems like golden threads, and peaceful ships moved between them in slow, graceful patterns. "Welcome to Remembrance," Maria said, turning to face the cadets. "This world exists for one purpose, to make sure that humanity never forgets what we once had and what we lost." The cadets were all between 18 and 20 years old, fresh from the military academies on Earth and the outer colonies. They had studied the contact wars in their classes, of course. They knew the basic facts about humanity's brief time as part of the galactic community. But like all young humans, they had never experienced what it meant to be part of something larger than their own species. "Captain Santos," said Cadet Reynolds, a young woman with short black hair and intelligent eyes, "why do we need a whole world just for a museum? Could this not be done with books and recordings?" Maria smiled. It was a good question, and one that every group of cadets asked. "Books and recordings can tell you what happened," she replied. "But they cannot make you feel what it was like. Come, let me show you." She led them deeper into the museum, past displays showing humanity's first attempts at space travel, past models of the generation ships that had carried humans to their first colonies, past recreations of the early settlements on Mars and Europa. Finally, they arrived at the Hall of First Contact. Maria paused at the entrance, her hand resting on the control panel that would activate the displays inside. "What I'm about to show you," she said seriously, "is the most important moment in human history. Not because of what it led to, but because of what it represented. For 27 years, humanity was not alone." She pressed the control panel and the hall came to life. The cadets gasped as holographic figures appeared around them. Humans and aliens stood together in what looked like a grand reception hall. The aliens were unlike anything the cadets had ever imagined. Some were tall and graceful with skin that shimmered like starlight. Others were short and round with fur that changed colors. Still others seemed to be made of living crystal that sang as they moved. "This is a recreation of the first contact celebration," Maria explained as they walked among the holograms. "It took place on Unity Station, 2 weeks after humanity received its first message from the Galactic Council. Representatives from 47 different species came to welcome us to the galactic community." Cadet Morrison, a tall young man with red hair, reached out tentatively toward one of the alien holograms. His hand passed through the figure, but the expression on his face showed that he could almost believe it was real. "They look so different from each other," he said softly. "How did they all manage to work together?" "Very carefully and with great patience," Maria replied. Each species had different needs, different ways of thinking, different cultural values, but they had learned that diversity made them stronger. When different kinds of minds work together, they can solve problems that no single species could handle alone. She led them to a display showing human and alien scientists working side by side in a laboratory. The aliens in this scene had multiple arms and large, compound eyes. They were helping human researchers examine samples of an unknown material. The Kethmori were master chemists, Maria explained. They could perceive molecular structures in ways that humans could not. In just 5 years of collaboration, human and Kethmori, scientists developed materials that were stronger than anything either species had created alone. What happened to them? Asked Cadet Chun, a quiet young woman, who had been listening intently. Maria's expression grew sad. They were part of the Betrayal Coalition. When humanity struck back during the Contact Wars, the Kethmori homeworld was completely destroyed. Their species went extinct in a single day. The cadets fell silent. This was the part of the story that their teachers had always focused on: the betrayal, the attack on Earth, humanity's terrible retaliation. But seeing the displays of cooperation and friendship made the destruction feel different, more personal, more tragic. They moved to the next section of the hall, which showed cultural exchanges between humans and aliens. Musicians from different species played instruments that created sounds no single species could produce. Artists collaborated on sculptures that existed in more dimensions than human eyes could see. Writers worked together to create stories that could only be understood by minds that thought in fundamentally different ways. "This is what we lost," Maria said quietly. "Not just the science and technology, but the art and beauty and wonder that came from truly connecting with other intelligent beings." Cadet Williams, a young man from one of the outer colonies, raised his hand. "Captain, my grandfather always told me that the aliens were planning to betray us from the beginning. That they never really accepted us as equals. Was that true?" Maria considered the question carefully. It was something that human historians had debated for centuries. "Some of them, yes," she admitted. The species that formed the Betrayal Coalition had been planning their attack almost from the moment humanity joined the galactic community. They saw us as a threat that needed to be eliminated. But not all of them? No, not all of them. Most of the species in the galaxy had nothing to do with the Coalition's plans. They were genuinely happy to have humans as part of their community. When the Coalition attacked Earth, 29 other species immediately offered to help defend us. "What happened to those species?" asked Cadet Reynolds. "They are still alive," Maria replied. "They still pay tribute to us every 3 months. They still fear us. But they were never our enemies." The cadets looked uncomfortable with this information. They had been taught that the isolation was necessary because the galaxy could not be trusted. Learning that many alien species had actually tried to help humanity during the war complicated that simple narrative. Maria led them to the centerpiece of the Hall of First Contact, a massive holographic recreation of Earth as it had looked before the Coalition's attack. The planet hung in the air above them, slowly rotating to show its blue oceans and green continents. "This is how Earth looked on the day the Coalition fleet arrived," Maria said. "Population, 2,300,000,000 humans. Orbital defenses, minimal. Military fleet, less than 1,000 ships, most of them designed for exploration rather than warfare." The hologram changed, showing red dots appearing around the planet. The Coalition brought 15,000 warships. They had been planning this attack for months. They thought it would be over in a matter of hours. The cadets watched in horrified fascination as the holographic attack began. Beams of energy lanced down from the Coalition ships, striking Earth cities. Explosions bloomed across the planet's surface like deadly flowers. The bombardment lasted for 6 hours, Maria continued. When it was over, most of Earth's major cities were in ruins. 2 billion people were dead or dying. The Coalition commanders sent a message to the survivors, demanding unconditional surrender. Cadet Morrison clenched his fists. How could they do something so terrible? Because they were afraid, Maria replied. Human technology was advancing very quickly. Human expansion into space was faster than anything the galaxy had seen before. The Coalition leaders convinced themselves that humans would eventually become a threat to all other species. They decided that the only safe solution was to wipe us out completely. But they were wrong, said Cadet Chun, about us being a threat, I mean. Maria looked at her sadly. Were they? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. The cadets looked at each other uncertainly, not sure how to respond. Come, Maria said, let me show you what happened next. She led them to the final section of the hall, which was dominated by a timeline showing the 72 hours of humanity's retaliation. The displays here were different from the earlier ones, starker, more clinical, focused on facts and figures rather than emotions and experiences. 12 hours after the bombardment of Earth ended, the first Coalition fleet was destroyed, Maria read from the timeline. Location: the Veltar home system. Fleet strength: 2,000 ships. Survivors: none. 24 hours, Coalition command base at Kepler Station eliminated. Personnel: 50,000. Survivors: none. 36 hours, Kethmori homeworld. Sterilized, population: 4 billion. Survivors: none. 48 hours, Jathe colonies in the Vega sector destroyed. Population: 12 billion. Survivors: none. The list continued, growing longer and more horrifying with each entry. Entire species wiped out, whole star systems turned into graveyards. Billions upon billions of intelligent beings killed in retaliation for the attack on Earth. How? Whispered Cadet Williams. How did we do all this? Our technology was primitive compared to theirs. Nobody knows, Maria admitted. The official records are classified at levels that most humans will never see. But somehow, in the space of 3 days, humanity revealed weapons and capabilities that the galaxy had never imagined. Some historians think we had been hiding our true technology all along, she continued. Others believe that we developed new weapons during the attack itself, using some kind of emergency research protocols. Still, others think that human military doctrine was simply so different from anything the galaxy had seen that we caught them completely unprepared. Cadet Reynolds studied the timeline displays with the careful attention of someone who planned to be a military officer. The targets were very precise, she observed. We did not attack random worlds. We went straight for military bases, government centers, and coalition leadership. Yes, Maria agreed. For all its overwhelming power, humanity's retaliation was surgically precise. We destroyed exactly those forces and individuals who had planned and carried out the attack on Earth. We did not target civilians unless they were on coalition military worlds. But entire species still died, Cadet Morrison pointed out. Yes, they did. Because when you destroy a species' homeworld and all their colonies, it does not matter whether you intended to kill civilians or not. The result is the same. The cadets stood in silence, absorbing the weight of what they had learned. Finally, Cadet Chun spoke up. Captain, do you think we made the right choice to retaliate so completely? Maria looked at the young woman for a long moment before answering. I think we made the only choice we could make at the time. Earth was burning. Billions of our people were dead. The Coalition had made it clear that they intended to exterminate humanity completely. We had to defend ourselves. But Cadet Reynolds could hear the uncertainty in Maria's voice. But I also think that our retaliation changed us in ways we are still trying to understand. We saved humanity, but we became something different in the process. Something the galaxy fears, something we ourselves might not recognize. She gestured to the displays around them, showing the destruction that humanity had unleashed. The species that attacked us are gone now. Most of them had nothing to do with the Coalition's decision. They were just following orders from their leaders, but we destroyed them all anyway. And the species that tried to help us, asked Cadet Williams, they survived. But they learned the same lesson as everyone else in the galaxy. That humanity, when threatened, is capable of terrible things. That our friendship comes with a price and our anger has no limits. As they left the Hall of First Contact and walked toward the exit of the museum, Maria could see that the cadets were struggling with what they had learned. The simple story they had been taught, that humanity was the innocent victim of an unprovoked attack, had been replaced by something much more complicated. Captain, Cadet Morrison said as they reached the museum's entrance. "What are we supposed to do with all this information? How are we supposed to serve as officers when we know how much destruction humanity is capable of?" Maria stopped walking and turned to face the group. "You are supposed to remember," she said simply. "Remember what we lost when we became isolated. Remember what we gained when we were part of something larger. Remember the price that others paid for the Coalition's decision to attack us. And most importantly, remember that the power to destroy is not the same thing as the wisdom to know when destruction is necessary. Our job as officers is not just to protect humanity," she continued. "It is to make sure that humanity remains worthy of protection, that we do not become the very thing that the Coalition feared we would become." As the cadets filed out of the museum and back toward their transport ship, Maria remained behind for a moment. She looked back at the holographic display of the galaxy during first contact, with its bright stars and peaceful trade routes and cooperative civilizations. Somewhere out there, beyond the red markers and defense platforms that surrounded human space, that galaxy still existed. Changed, diminished, and fearful, but still alive. Still wondering if the humans they had briefly known were still alive somewhere behind their walls. Maria wondered if she would ever find out the answer to that question. She wondered if anyone would. President Elena Vasquez sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the Capitol building on Earth, staring at the holographic message that had changed everything. Around the table, the 12 members of the Human Security Council looked just as shocked as she felt. The message itself was simple, a peaceful greeting from someone calling herself Prime Director Kesara of the Galactic Council. She spoke in perfect human English, though her voice had the musical quality that belonged to the Velthani species. She was young, probably born long after the contact wars ended. She had never seen a human before, never experienced the terror that older aliens felt when thinking about humanity. "We know this must come as a surprise," the alien leader said in the recording. "It has been 300 years since our species last spoke to each other. But the galaxy has changed, and we believe it is time to try again. The Galactic Council formally apologizes for the actions of the Betrayal Coalition. We understand that you have every reason to distrust us, but we hope that you will consider opening a dialogue. There are things we need to discuss, things that affect both humanity and the rest of the galaxy." The message had arrived 12 hours ago, transmitted directly through the communication barriers that surrounded human space. It should have been impossible. The red markers and defense platforms were supposed to prevent any alien signals from reaching human worlds, but somehow this young alien leader had found a way through. "How did she do it?" asked General Harrison, the head of Human Space Defense. He was an old man, nearly 80 years old, and one of the few people who remembered the time before the isolation. "Our communication barriers have never been breached before." "According to the technical analysis," replied Dr. Sarah Kim, the head of Human Intelligence, "the message was transmitted using quantum entanglement principles that we developed ourselves about 50 years ago. Somehow, they figured out our own technology and used it against us." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. If the aliens could break through humanity's communication barriers, what else could they do? Were the red markers and defense platforms still enough to protect human space? "That is not the most disturbing part," said Admiral Chun, who had been studying the intelligence reports. "Our monitoring stations have detected increased activity throughout the galaxy. Ships moving in patterns we have not seen since the contact wars. The aliens are preparing for something." "A war?" asked General Harrison. "Unknown. But they are definitely coordinating on a scale we have not observed in centuries." Elena turned to her chief advisor, Dr. Thomas Morrison. He was the grandson of the Dr. Morrison who had studied alien psychology for decades. Like his grandfather, he spent his time trying to understand how alien minds worked. "What do you think they want?" Elena asked him. Thomas was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts. "Based on the tribute recordings and cultural items we have received over the years, I believe the galaxy is facing some kind of crisis. Their technology has not advanced much since the contact wars, Their population growth has been slow. Many species seem to be stagnating or even declining. Good, muttered General Harrison. Let them rot. It is not that simple, Camus continued. If the galaxy collapses, we lose our tribute payments. More importantly, we lose the buffer zone that keeps potential threats far away from human space. A chaotic galaxy could be more dangerous to us than an organized one. Elena stood up and walked to the large window that looked out over the underground command center. Hundreds of technicians and analysts worked at their stations, monitoring threats from across the galaxy, managing the defense systems that kept humanity safe. There is something else, she said without turning around. Something I have not told you yet. The council members looked at each other nervously. Elena was known for her careful honesty. If she was keeping secrets, it meant the situation was even worse than they thought. Yesterday, before this message arrived, I received a classified report from our deep space monitoring stations, Elena continued. 17 star systems have gone dark in the past 6 months. No communications, no energy signatures, no signs of life. Which systems? Asked Admiral Chung. All of them were former coalition worlds. The ones we sterilized during the contact wars. Dr. Kim leaned forward in her chair. That is impossible. Those worlds have been dead for 3 centuries. There is nothing there but radioactive rock. That is what we thought, Elena replied. But something is happening in those systems. Something that is blocking all electromagnetic radiation from escaping. Our sensors cannot penetrate whatever is causing the effect. General Harrison's face went pale. You think something is living there? On worlds we destroyed? I think we need to consider the possibility that our understanding of what happened during the contact wars is incomplete, Elena said carefully. She turned back to face the council, which brings us to the real question. Do we respond to this message? Do we risk opening communications with the galaxy after 300 years of isolation? The argument that followed was heated and intense. General Harrison and the military advisors argued that any contact with aliens was too dangerous. They pointed out that humanity had survived and prospered because of the isolation. Why risk that safety now? Dr. Morrison and the research staff argued that humanity needed to understand what was happening in the galaxy. The dark star systems, the increased alien activity, the breakthrough in their communication barriers, all of these suggested that the situation was changing in ways that could threaten human space. Admiral Chun took a middle position. She agreed that the situation was concerning, but she wanted to gather more intelligence before making any decisions about contact. Elena listened to all of them, but her mind kept returning to something her grandmother had told her years ago. Her grandmother had been a child during the contact wars, old enough to remember the orbital bombardment of Earth, but young enough to survive the aftermath. The worst part was not the bombs, her grandmother had said. The worst part was the silence that came after. For weeks, we did not know if there were any other humans left alive anywhere in the galaxy. We did not know if help was coming or if we were completely alone. That silence was worse than any weapon. Now, 300 years later, humanity had chosen that silence for themselves. They had built walls so high and so strong that they could not hear what was happening beyond them. And Elena was beginning to wonder if that silence was still protecting them, or if it had become a trap. I want to hear from the outer colonies, she said finally, cutting through the argument. Get me a secure connection to Governor Martinez on New Eden, Governor Park on Nova Prime, and Governor Johnson on Frontier Station. Within an hour, the holographic images of the 3 colonial governors appeared around the table. These were the people who lived closest to the boundary of human space, who dealt most directly with the tribute collections and the defense platforms. Have any of you noticed changes in alien behavior recently? Elena asked them. Governor Martinez, a middle-aged woman who had spent her entire life on the frontier, answered first. The tribute ships have been arriving earlier than scheduled, and there are more of them than usual. Some of them are flying ships we have never seen before. More concerning, added Governor Park, is what they are bringing. The tribute items. Used to be fairly predictable: food, raw materials, basic manufactured goods. But lately we have been receiving advanced technology, weapons, defensive systems, things that the aliens would normally keep for themselves. Governor Johnson, the oldest of the three, looked troubled. My intelligence staff thinks the aliens are trying to buy extra protection, like they are preparing for some kind of threat and want to make sure we stay on their side. A threat from where? Asked General Harrison. Unknown, but it has them scared enough to give us their best military technology. Elena felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. The dark star systems, the increased alien activity, the breakthrough in communication barriers, the unusual tribute items. And now this message from a young alien leader who claimed to represent a changed galaxy. Dr. Morrison, she said, in your opinion, is this message genuine? Is this alien leader really speaking for the Galactic Council? Thomas studied the holographic recording again, paying attention to details that others might miss. The language patterns are consistent with Velthani cultural norms. The formal structure of the message follows traditional council protocols, and the quantum entanglement technology required to send it would be extremely difficult to fake. So, you think it is real? I think someone with legitimate authority sent this message. Whether that person can be trusted is a different question. Elena looked around the table at the faces of her advisors. These were the people responsible for keeping 50 billion humans safe. Whatever decision she made would affect not just humanity's future, but the future of every intelligent species in the galaxy. General Harrison, she said, if we decided to respond to this message, what would be the minimum security precautions? The old general looked like he had bitten into something sour. The meeting would have to take place at the boundary of human space. No aliens would be allowed past the red markers. Our most powerful defense platforms would need to be fully active, and we would need at least 3 full battle fleets standing by in case of treachery. Admiral Chun, do you agree? I would add one more requirement, the admiral replied. Any human representatives at such a meeting would need to be expendable. If this is a trap, we cannot risk losing key leadership. Elena nodded slowly. Dr. Morrison, if we did arrange a meeting, who should represent humanity? Someone old enough to remember the time before isolation, Thomas said immediately. Someone who understands both the benefits and the costs of contact with aliens. And someone who the aliens might recognize as speaking with legitimate authority. Do you have anyone in mind? Thomas was quiet for a moment, then said, Ambassador Park. Several council members gasped. Ambassador Thomas Park was 93 years old and one of the last surviving members of humanity's original diplomatic corps. He had been part of the first contact team, had lived through the golden age of galactic cooperation, had survived the coalition's attack on Earth, and had witnessed humanity's terrible retaliation. He is too old, objected General Harrison. Too frail for such an important mission. He is the only person alive who can speak to the aliens as an equal, Thomas replied. He knew them before the war. He understands what was lost. And he has the moral authority to negotiate on behalf of all humanity. Elena walked back to the window and looked out at the command center again. These people worked every day to protect human space from external threats. But they were also cut off from everything that lay beyond those threats. They lived in a fortress that was also a prison. Schedule a secure communication with Ambassador Park, she said finally. I want to hear what he thinks about this message. Ma'am, asked Dr. Kim, are you seriously considering responding to the aliens? Elena turned to face the council one more time. I am considering the possibility that our 300 years of isolation are about to end whether we want them to or not. The question is whether we end them on our terms or whether circumstances force the decision on us. The galaxy is changing, she continued. Something is happening out there that has the aliens scared enough to risk contacting us. We can either try to understand what that something is, or we can wait for it to reach our borders. And if it is a trap? Asked General Harrison. Then we deal with it the same way we dealt with the coalition, Elena replied. But if it is not a trap, if this is a genuine attempt to re-establish communication, then we need to decide whether humanity is ready to rejoin the galaxy. Are we ready? Asked Admiral Chun. Elena looked around the table at the faces of the people who would help her make this decision. They were intelligent, dedicated, and completely committed to protecting humanity. But they were also the products of 3 centuries of isolation. They had never experienced the wonder of discovering that intelligence could take so many different forms. They had never felt the joy of collaboration between species. They had never known anything but fear and mistrust when it came to aliens. I do not know, Elena admitted. But I think it is time to find out. Ambassador Thomas Park stood at the observation window of the diplomatic station, watching the alien fleet approach the boundary of human space. Even at 93 years old, his eyes were sharp enough to see the differences between these ships. And the ones he remembered from his youth, the vessels were sleeker now, more graceful in their design. But they were also smaller than the ships from the Contact Wars era, and there were fewer of them. Where once the galaxy's fleets had numbered in the tens of thousands, this delegation consisted of only 12 ships representing the major surviving species. They look afraid, said Captain Elena Rodriguez, who had been assigned as Park's military liaison for this historic meeting. She was young enough to be his great-granddaughter, born in an age when aliens existed only in history books and museum displays. They should be afraid, Park replied softly. We all should be. Through the communication system, they could hear the approach protocols being exchanged between the alien ships and the human defense platforms. The massive weapon systems that surrounded human space tracked every alien vessel with mechanical precision, ready to destroy the entire delegation in milliseconds. If they made any threatening moves, Park remembered when space had been different. When ships moved freely between star systems without fear, when first contact with a new species was cause for celebration rather than suspicion. Those days felt like they belonged to a different universe entirely. A chime announced an incoming transmission. On the main screen, the image of Prime Director Kasara appeared. She was indeed young, probably no more than 40 years old by Velfani standards. Her skin had the pale blue coloration that marked her as a member of the intellectual caste, and her large dark eyes held an expression of nervous hope. Ambassador Park, she said, her voice carrying the musical tones of her species. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know it represents a significant risk for your people. As, it does for yours? Park replied. Tell me, Prime Director, were you alive during the Contact Wars? No, sir, I was born 57 years after they ended. Everything I know about that time comes from historical records and the stories of survivors. Park nodded. Then you understand that we are both dealing with the shadows of choices made by people who are long dead. The question is whether we can find a way forward that honors the memory of those we lost without being trapped by it. Kesara's expression grew more serious. That is exactly what I hoped you would say, Ambassador. The galaxy needs your help. Our help? Captain Rodriguez looked surprised. After 300 years of paying tribute to us, now you want our help? The tribute was never about payment, Kasara explained. It was about communication. Every shipment included cultural items, scientific data, technological samples. We have been trying to show you how the galaxy has changed, hoping that someday you would be ready to rejoin us. Park studied the young alien leader carefully. And what makes you think we are ready now? Kasara hesitated for a moment, then said, Because something is coming that threatens all of us. Human and alien alike. She gestured, and the main screen changed to show a star map of the galaxy. Several sectors were marked in black, like holes burned through the fabric of space itself. These are the dark zones, Kasara continued. Star systems where all electromagnetic radiation has simply stopped. No light, no radio signals, no energy signatures of any kind. They appear to be completely empty, but our long-range sensors detect gravitational anomalies that suggest something massive is still there. Park felt his blood run cold. How many systems? 43 as of last week. The effect is spreading at a rate of approximately one system per month. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. That is impossible. Nothing can just make stars disappear. We thought so too, Kasara replied, until we sent a probe into one of the dark zones. The screen changed again, showing what looked like sensor readings from a deep space exploration vessel. Park studied the data carefully, his old mind still sharp enough to understand the implications. Your probe detected artificial structures, he said quietly. Massive ones. Constructions on a scale that dwarfs anything the galaxy has ever built. And they appear to be growing. Park turned to look at Captain Rodriguez. Captain, I need you to contact Earth immediately. Request a secure connection to President Vasquez. Sir, that could take hours to arrange. Then we had better start now. While they waited for the communication link to be established, Park continued his conversation with Kasara. He learned that the dark zones had first appeared in the systems that humanity had sterilized during the contact wars. The dead worlds that had been lifeless for 3 centuries were somehow at the center of whatever was happening. Do you have any theories about what these structures might be? Park asked. Kasara looked uncomfortable. Our scientists have several hypotheses. None of them are pleasant. Tell me. The most likely explanation is that someone or something is harvesting the energy from entire star systems. Not just the light and heat, but the actual matter of the stars themselves. The gravitational anomaly suggests that the mass is still there, but it has been converted into some other form. Converted into what? We do not know. But the rate of expansion suggests that whatever is doing this has access to technology far beyond anything in our current understanding. Park felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. And you think this harvesting ... started on the worlds we destroyed? The pattern is unmistakable. Every dark zone began in a system that was sterilized during the contact wars. Whatever is happening, it appears to be connected to the weapons humanity used 3 centuries ago. When the secure connection to Earth was finally established, President Vasquez appeared on a secondary screen. Park could see the strain in her face, the weight of leading humanity during the most challenging period since the contact wars themselves. Mr. Ambassador, she said formally, I trust you have learned something significant. More significant than we feared, Madam President. Park quickly summarized what Kasara had told him about the dark zones and their apparent connection to humanity's ancient weapons. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment after he finished. Are you telling me that our retaliation during the contact war somehow caused this? I am telling you that we may have set in motion something we did not understand at the time, Park replied. Something that is now threatening the entire galaxy. Including human space? The expansion pattern suggests that the dark zones will reach our outer colonies within 10 years. Kasara interjected, possibly sooner if the rate of growth accelerates. Vasquez looked directly at the alien leader. And what exactly are you proposing we do about it? Work together, Kasara said simply. Combine human and galactic technology to understand what we are facing. Share information and resources to find a solution before it is too late. You want us to lower our defenses? After 300 years of isolation? I want us to survive, Kasara replied, all of us. Park could see the struggle playing out on Vasquez's face. As the leader of humanity, she was responsible for the safety and security of 50 billion people. Lowering the barriers that had protected human space for 3 centuries would be the most dangerous decision any human leader had ever made. What guarantees can you offer? Vasquez asked finally. None, Kasara admitted. Just as we can offer no guarantees that we will survive if we continue as we are. But I can tell you this, the galaxy remembers what humanity was like before the war. We remember your curiosity, your creativity, your desire to explore and discover. Those qualities may be our only hope of understanding what we are facing. And if we refuse, then we will face whatever is coming alone. And based on what we have seen so far, that means we will all die alone. Park stepped forward. Madam President, if I may. Of course, Ambassador. I have spent my entire life at the intersection between humanity and the galaxy. I have seen what we can accomplish together, and I have seen the terrible cost of our separation. This young woman is offering us a chance to reclaim something we lost 3 centuries ago. At considerable risk. Yes, but also at considerable potential gain. If we can solve this crisis together, we prove that the galaxy can trust us again. That we are partners rather than masters. That the isolation can finally end. Vasquez was quiet for several minutes, weighing options that would affect not just humanity but every intelligent species in the galaxy. Finally she spoke. I will agree to limited cooperation, she said carefully. A joint research station at the boundary of human space, equal numbers of human and alien scientists. Shared information about the dark zones. But the defense barriers remain in place, and any sign of deception will result in immediate termination of the agreement. Kisara's face lit up with relief and gratitude. Thank you, Madam President. You will not regret this decision. I hope not, Vasquez replied. Because if I am wrong, it may be the last decision humanity ever makes. Over the following months, the Joint Research Station became a symbol of cautious hope. Human and alien scientists worked side by side for the first time in 3 centuries, combining their knowledge and technology to understand the threat facing the galaxy. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The dark zones were indeed the result of humanity's retaliation during the contact wars, but not in the way anyone had expected. The weapons humanity had used to sterilize coalition worlds had been more than just destructive devices. They had been seeds of something far more complex. On each dead world, the weapons had left behind microscopic machines that slowly converted matter into energy, then used that energy to build larger machines, which built even larger machines in an endless cycle of growth and expansion. The process had taken 3 centuries to reach critical mass, but once it began consuming entire star systems, the rate of growth had become exponential. The machines were not malevolent. They had no consciousness or agenda beyond their programming. But they had been designed to continue growing indefinitely, converting any matter they encountered into more machines. If left unchecked, they would eventually consume the entire galaxy. The solution, when it was finally discovered, required the combined knowledge of dozens of species working together. It was elegant and complex, requiring technology that no single species could have developed alone. More importantly, it required trust and cooperation on a scale that the galaxy had not seen since before the contact wars. When the threat was finally neutralized, the galaxy faced a choice about what would come next. The defense barriers around human space were still in place. The tribute system was still functioning. The fear and mistrust of 3 centuries could easily reassert itself. But something had changed during those months of cooperation. Humans had remembered what it felt like to be part of something larger than themselves. Aliens had seen that humanity could be trusted as partners rather than feared as conquerors. The memorial worlds within human space remained forbidden to aliens, as Park had promised. The weapons systems that guarded the boundaries stayed active as a reminder of the cost of betrayal. But the barriers to communication came down, and for the first time in 3 centuries, ships began moving freely between human space and the rest of the galaxy. Park did not live to see the new age of cooperation that followed. He died peacefully, at the age of 94, just days after the Dark Zone crisis was resolved. But his final words, recorded by Captain Rodriguez, became the motto of the new Galactic Alliance. The price of isolation is always higher than the risk of trust. The galaxy would never again be what it had been before the contact wars, too. Much had been lost, too much pain had been inflicted, too much fear had taken root. But it had become something new, a place where different species could work together while remembering the cost of their mistakes. And humanity, for the first time in 3 centuries, was no longer alone among the stars.